Tired of spending hundreds of dollars for prescription glasses? Zenni offers thousands of affordable eyewear styles, starting at just $6.95. No ridiculous markups, no hassles, just quality, affordable eyewear delivered right to you. Visit Zenni today at zenni.com/CNN.
Out front next, Team Trump blaming Bob Mueller for undermining America's relationship with Russia. What about the 26 Russians who have been indicted for attacking America? Plus more legal trouble for Paul Manafort tonight. The president's former campaign chairman could face new charges, possibly a retrial, the breaking news, and a 7.0 earthquake destroying homes, splitting roads in half. All of this in Alaska. The aftershocks still coming. Let's go out front. Good evening, I'm Erin Burnett. Out front tonight, President Trump and 19 other world leaders posing just moments ago with their spouses. Plenty of smiles to go around. But below the surface in this picture, anger and resentment. Not at brutal dictators like Vladimir Putin or Saudi Arabia's Mohammed bin Salman. No, anger at Robert Mueller. President Trump's press secretary today blaming the special counsel for hurting America's relationship with Russia. Sarah Sanders saying in a statement, quote, "The Russian witch hunt hoax, which is hopefully now nearing an end, is doing very well. Unfortunately, it probably does undermine our relationship with Russia." So the press secretary is blaming Robert Mueller for undermining America's relationship with Russia, not the 26 Russians Mueller has indicted for attacking America during the 2016 election. Those 26 Russians, of course, do include top military officials with direct ties to Vladimir Putin. Even the Republican chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee, which is investigating Russian meddling in the election, said today, and I quote Chairman Burr, "We never dreamed that we would find as coordinated, complicated, focused efforts by Russia to use technological tools that allow them to meddle anywhere." That in and of itself, an incredible statement. And yet, Sarah Sanders says it is Robert Mueller, who is the one who has been uncovering the Russians involved, the Russian efforts to harm America. It is Robert Mueller who is undermining the relationship with Russia. It is pretty stunning, and it's worth highlighting that Sanders' first words in that statement, calling the Russia probe a witch hunt, a hoax. Now, the president and his press secretary use those words so often we barely hear them anymore. But when you use them and you call it a hoax when Russia attacked America, it means you're siding with the Russians.
It's a total witch hunt.
It's a Democrat hoax.
They have this witch hunt.
That was a Democrat hoax.
It's a witch hunt.
Phony witch hunt.
It was a hoax.
It's like a witch hunt. It's like a witch hunt.
This is a hoax. The witch hunt continues. I call it the Russian hoax.
The witch hunt, as I call it.
26 Russians indicted is no hoax. And those words make the president's claim that he suddenly canceled his planned meeting with Vladimir Putin at the G20 summit due to Russian aggression in Ukraine really hard to stomach. Here's the president earlier today.
Ukraine. We don't like what happened. We're not happy about it. Nobody is. On the basis of what took place with respect to the ships and the sailors, that was the sole reason.
That was the sole reason that he canceled the meeting. Well, it doesn't add up to being any part of the reason, because here are the facts. Russia did seize 3 Ukrainian naval vessels and more than 20 sailors. That happened on Sunday. Since then, President Trump has never directly denounced Russia for doing that. And yesterday, when he was asked specifically about the incident and whether, because of it, he'd still meet with Putin, here's what happened.
Are you going to meet with him? And if so, what are you going to talk about?
I probably will be meeting with President Putin. We haven't terminated that meeting.
Okay. 4 days after Russia seized the ships, the meeting was on, right? Not going to terminate it. So Trump said that. Then he boarded Air Force One to fly to Buenos Aires for the meeting, right? And then less than an hour later from the plane, the president tweeted, quote, "Based on the fact that the ships and sailors have not been returned to Ukraine from Russia, I have decided it would be best for all parties concerned to cancel my previously scheduled meeting in Argentina with President Vladimir Putin." So what happened in that hour from when he said it was going ahead and then it didn't? Well, the president saw how breaking news of Michael Cohen was playing out. Cohen pleading guilty to lying to Congress about Trump's business ties in Russia and saying Trump knew about the lie. Wall-to-wall coverage. We know that the president was, quote, spooked and completely distracted by the Cohen news, according to source close to the president. And Jeff Zeleny now is out front. He is in Buenos Aires, where the president is meeting with world leaders. Jeff, no Trump-Putin meeting, but how has the president's time in Buenos Aires been going?
Aaron, good evening. There will be no official Trump-Putin meeting, so that means there will not be a dissection of that meeting. There will not be a Helsinki-like summit where the president's meeting with him is dissected for days and days. Of course, that was widely criticized. But we do expect there to be, more conversations on the sidelines, if you will. They're at a dinner this evening, a likely venue for them to speak. But as for the president, he was largely receding in the backgrounds at some points. And this is one moment he particularly was. He did not want this moment, of course, where Vladimir Putin, we saw, this video was pretty incredible from earlier today. Let's take a look at it, where Vladimir Putin was essentially high-fiving the Saudi crown prince, Mohammed bin Salman, as they were walking into the room. You see President Trump there behind them walking in. He, of course, did not want that image of him high-fiving the Saudi crown prince, but he did have a brief conversation with him. The White House said it was simply a greeting. The president would not disclose what they talked about. But, Aaron, what is really hanging over all of this is what the president is making clear. It is still all about the Russia investigation in his mind. But we have been to so many of these summits, over the last year and a half since the president started traveling internationally. There has always been a Russia headline hanging over him. That has never stopped him from wanting to meet with Vladimir Putin before. In fact, he has always said he wanted to do that, and he can do more than one thing at a time. He needs to have these important meetings. Yesterday morning, as you said, he said it was a good time to have it. But now, Aaron, the optics of this of any meeting with Vladimir Putin at the same time that clearly this investigation is in a very new place is not something the White House wanted. So the president at that dinner this evening, he'll be here again tomorrow. Again, perhaps the biggest meeting, the most consequential meeting is with Xi Jinping tomorrow evening, a dinner with him. But Aaron, the headlines of Russia certainly in the president's head and certainly hanging over this summit here. Aaron.
Jeff Zeleny, thank you very much. Live from Argentina tonight. And out front now, let's go to David Gergen. Also with me, Juliette Kayyem, former Assistant Secretary of Homeland Security for the Obama administration. Steve Hall, former CIA Chief of Russia Operations, also here. David, you heard the White House today, right? The statement blames Mueller. Bob Mueller is partly responsible for undermining the relationship with Russia.
So far, this summit in Argentina has been an intellectual mess for the White House. I don't know why they would go after Bob Mueller when they're at a summit, meeting with or in the midst of many of the world's biggest leaders. It's wildly off base. I think anybody who's followed this knows that for 2 years plus, Donald Trump has been very, very sympathetic toward Vladimir Putin, always hesitates to call him out on anything. And what we know is that if it's a crisis in the Mueller investigation, it is because Donald Trump's most trusted lawyer friend for years and years has now admitted that he's been lying about the relationship between Trump and the Russians, and that's what's caused the real crisis-like atmosphere. Yeah. But just in one relationship after another, Aaron, I think everyone on this program is accustomed to presidents going into these summits very, very well prepared, clear sense of what they're trying to get out of it, knowing exactly what meetings they're going to have, having spent hour after hour figuring out the meetings. And this one is just a hash. You never know from one minute to the next what he's going to do. He keeps changing his mind, and what it does to the reputation. He's distracted. His whole team seems distracted. And it just hurts American diplomacy. I can't tell you how damaging this is over time.
Steve, what do you think? You hear, obviously, the Republican chairman investigating this on the Senate side, right? Respected investigation. Never dreamed they would find what Russia did. You have 26 indictments by Bob Mueller of Russian attacking America's election system. And yet the White House today says that Mueller is undermining the relationship with Russia. What does Putin think when he hears that, Steve?
Well, Aaron, for Putin, this is all a huge win. I mean, what David was just talking about is certainly true in terms of the United States, and I think this president looking weak. I think Putin has judged that this is not a strong world leader that he has to be concerned about, and I think that's reflected in Russia's actions. Not only the annexation of Crimea, the continuing war that Russia is certainly waging in the eastern part of that country, the most recent incident in the Kerch Straits. So I think Vladimir Putin has taken his measure of Donald Donald Trump and of this administration and said, I think I can keep pushing forward. I don't think there's going to be any consequences for me because this president, first of all, I think I have some stuff over him, I think is what Putin is saying. And he also understands that Trump has damaged the relationship with the allies. So the West is more divided and more weak, and that gives Putin more room to maneuver, which is precisely what he's done.
And now, Juliet, the president's saying, oh, he canceled the meeting solely because of Ukraine. Obviously, I laid out the timeline. It doesn't appear to add up in any way, shape, or form. It doesn't appear to be even part of the reason. It appears to be an excuse for the real reason. Your take?
Oh, absolutely. And it's just an attempt for them to create some fictitious narrative about what's going on with this White House and the U.S. position in the world. Jeff reported, that Trump had to cancel because he couldn't be seen being with Putin. I would actually put a little wrinkle on that. I think that Trump may not want to see Putin at this stage. If we believe that Mueller has pretty concrete evidence that not only did the Russians have Trump compromised and his family compromised, and then, of course, there's the election hacking issue and what they did in the election, we may see a president who does not want to face a person who knows what he has over him. And so I'm not surprised. If I were Trump, I would not want to see Putin at this stage. If I were the president of the United States with a backbone to defend American interests, i.e. about the Ukraine or our election, then I, of course, would want to see Putin. So I'm pretty convinced that Trump's narrative is not about the Ukraine being the reason that he stopped the meeting is completely false. But I'm also now convinced after the news of yesterday that Trump knows what Putin knows, and Putin knows what Mueller knows. And this is a very scary time for the United States.
Steve, two people, you just heard Jeff Zeleny talking about Mohammed bin Salman and Vladimir Putin and that, sort of casual bro-style high five, swing handle greeting between the two as Trump was, in Jeff's words, receding in the background. Two dictators who have backed murders on foreign soil in the past 12 months. Two dictators Trump has lauded, right, as strong, explicitly siding with. But we saw this greeting today. What do you make of that?
Well, you're exactly right. I mean, you have two autocrats, you have two dictators, who see eye to eye and are sort of saying, hey, bro, well done. If we had, and here I would agree with Juliet, if we had a normal president, then that president would go into both of those guys and say, and lay down the law and say, look, your behavior, Vladimir Putin, is completely against international, law, and ourselves and our allies are going to make you pay a price for it. Saudi Arabia, you're not going to go around killing journalists, murdering journalists in your own consulates. That would be what you would have if you had a normal president. But what we have is Donald Trump. And so if Donald Trump goes behind closed doors with either of those guys like he did in Helsinki, then who's to say he's not going to come out with his tail between his legs exactly like he did in Helsinki, giving, Putin a real boost. So, right. My assessment is it's probably not a bad thing that he actually didn't meet with these guys, because at the very least they don't get a meeting with the American president, which is always a win for a foreign head of state.
The irony for the president of the United States is that he's glad about these ships being seized because as we all said, that's given him a reason to cancel the meeting, which of course isn't the real reason. Thank you all very much. And next, Robert Mueller may not be done with Paul Manafort. Some big developments on this front tonight. Breaking news on charges coming. And the top Republican on the Senate Intelligence Committee, a stunning warning tonight from Burr.
If you lie to us, we're going to go after you.
And apparently there are people on that list. Plus, a massive earthquake striking the United States today. Look at this. A building's destroyed, roads collapsing tonight, officials scrambling. Incredible this happening. We're going to go on the ground in Alaska.
Tired of spending hundreds of dollars for prescription glasses? Our friends at Zenni Optical offer a huge variety of high-quality, stylish frames and state-of-the-art optics starting at just $6.95. You can get multiple frames with this great pricing for less than one pair elsewhere. Start building your eyewear wardrobe from the comfort of your own home at Zenni.com. With the latest trends in eyewear available in hundreds of frame styles and materials, there isn't a better way to change it up for every season. Plus, Zenni offers prescription sunglasses at incredible prices. Visit Zenni today at Zenni.com/CNN. That's Zenni.com/CNN.
tonight, special counsel Robert Mueller now weighing possible new charges against Paul Manafort and is even considering a retrial on federal charges that resulted in a hung jury last summer. This comes just after Mueller's team accused Manafort of violating his plea deal by repeatedly lying, they say repeatedly lying to prosecutors, even after agreeing to cooperate. That revelation, one of several game-changing ones this week in the Mueller probe. Evan Perez is out front. And Evan, these new charges, what could they entail?
Well, one of the possibilities, Aaron, is that Paul Manafort could end up getting charged for things that he admitted to doing that he has not yet been charged. If you remember, he spent more than 9 days, at least 9 days, behind closed doors with the Mueller prosecutors, spending dozens and dozens of hours talking to them. And so if he admitted to some new crimes that they were not aware of or that he hasn't been charged with, apparently that is one of the things that they're looking at. Now, they're also looking at
he would have thought, sorry, Evan, he would have thought, oh, I'm cooperating, so I can't get in trouble for them. And now they say you violated it. Well, now you can.
Right, because they've now blown up the cooperation agreement because they said he repeatedly lied during those times that he was supposed to be cooperating with prosecutors. And as you mentioned, one of the other things that they're looking at is the possibility of retrying him on some of the charges that the jury was not able to reach a verdict on back earlier in the summer when he was on trial in Alexandria, Virginia. If you remember, there were some charges that the jury could not reach a verdict on, and so they are still holding out the possibility as they go through the procedure here of putting more charges on Manafort, putting him back on trial. Now, keep in mind, he's facing decades possibly in prison as a result of being found guilty both in Virginia and now pleading guilty here in Washington, D.C. The judge has set March 5th, 2019 as his sentencing date. But between now and then, Aaron, we're expecting a big fight to break out in court between the prosecutors and the Manafort team. Remember, Manafort's team says that he didn't lie, and they now are going to seek evidence from the prosecutors. They want evidence of what lies exactly these are, and they say they're going to try to maybe get put some of the FBI people, some of the prosecutors to explain exactly what happened behind closed doors during a public hearing before this judge. So we're expecting a lot of more fireworks in the Manafort case between now and March when he finally is sentenced.
All right. Thank you very much, Evan. And, of course, obviously hugely significant coming as it does, as Michael Cohen is saying he lied about the president's Russian business ties to protect the president with the president's knowledge. With me now, former Assistant U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York, Harry Sandick, and former counsel to the U.S. Assistant Attorney General for National Security, Carrie Cordero. Harry, you're here with me. Manafort, government says possible new charges, retrial.
Yep.
How significant?
It's very significant for Manafort because when he entered into the cooperation agreement, you'll remember, as Evan was saying, several counts were open counts. They weren't convicted or acquitted. And as part of the cooperation, the government said in the plea agreement, we promise we won't retry you on those. But that plea agreement has been broken, according to the government. So now it's open season on Manafort. He can be charged with those counts. He can be charged with obstruction or false statements. And the defendant is going to try to keep that agreement in place to avoid more charges.
And, you know, the context here, Carrie, is so crucial, right? This is a huge week. You know, as Jeff Zeleny was saying, like, this is a week where possibly everything changed or became much more clear, right? On Tuesday, we got that draft charging document here at CNN for a Roger Stone ally, you know, Jerome Corsi, who, you know, ostensibly knew about WikiLeaks plans to get all these emails, right? Told Stone, and so Stone could tell Trump. And yesterday, the revelation that the former lawyer and fixer Michael Cohen lied about Trump's business deals in Moscow, particularly Trump Tower, obviously, and Trump knew about it. How bad of a week was this, Carrie?
It was a pretty bad week, or a pretty significant week. And I tend to think that the exposure of the lying, in particular the Michael Cohen plea agreement, where now it's revealed that he lied in his written testimony to Congress in their investigation, I think that is perhaps the most, if we can pick out of many significant events, the most significant in terms of what that means for potential exposure for those in the Trump organization or in close to the president or even the president himself in terms of responses that that he or others may have provided either to the intelligence committees or to the special counsel. And so now if Michael Cohen, if their stories had been aligned and those stories were not correct, and now Michael Cohen is providing the correct and accurate information, there's a lot of people who might be worried about potential exposure to false statements charges.
Harry, as part of Cohen's guilty plea, he said, quote, I made these statements to be consistent with individual one's political messaging and out of loyalty to individual one. Obviously, individual one is Donald Trump. How significant is it that he is now individual one? I mean, when you think about it, just, from a non-legal perspective, you think, well, individual one is the center. Individual one is everything emanates from. Individual one is this is all coming to you. Is that accurate?
It seems to be accurate, and it's frankly shocking because this is the way in which you refer to people who are on the periphery or somehow involved in a crime that somebody else has committed, and for that person not to be just an ordinary person, but the President of the United States. And we saw it also back in August when Michael Cohen said that the payments he made to Daniels and the other actress were made, essentially at the President's direction. Right. And so we see the President showing up in this shadowy way with not being named pursuant to DOJ policy, but everyone knows that what's being alleged is that the President is somehow very close to other people's criminal activity. And
Carrie, Trump's lawyer Rudy Giuliani today came out to attack the special counsel, and obviously, we heard, blaming Russia from Sarah Sanders. From Rudy Giuliani, quote, Mueller filed an indictment just as the President left for the G20. In July, he indicted the Russians who will never come here just before he left for Helsinki. Either could have been done earlier or later. Out of control. Supervision, please. What do you make? I mean, she's obviously trying to say, I guess the pretty clear implication is make Trump look bad on the world stage, make Trump look like Putin's patsy right before he sees him. Does Giuliani have a point, Carrie?
No, it's really disappointing. As a former Justice Department lawyer, and he was a U.S. attorney, it's just so disappointing to see him sort of accuse the prosecutors of this type of activity. First of all, on the timing front, I just don't believe that the special counsel is timing their criminal process according to diplomatic trips that the president may have scheduled. I think the more relevant factor in the timing of the special counsel's release of the Michael Cohen plea had to do perhaps with the timing of the president submitting his written responses. Right. But I don't think that there's any factual basis to think that the special counsel is trying to play games in terms of the timing and embarrassing the president or anything like that. And then as far as the supervision comment, I mean, it's hard to not think of that as a very public appeal to the acting attorney general, which really plays into all of the really serious concerns that lawyers of all across the political spectrum, across the legal scholarship spectrum, from liberal to conservative lawyers, everybody is concerned about the improper attempted influence on the Justice Department and the undermining of rule of law. And if he's trying to insinuate that now's the time for acting Attorney General Whitaker to step up and play some kind of role to tamp down the special counsel's investigation, that's just so out of bounds.
All right. Thank you very much, both of you. And developments on the acting attorney general tonight. He appears to have made a deal with Democrats. Plus, thousands of people scrambling for safety. A massive earthquake striking Alaska. Homes, businesses, as you can see, shaking. The danger not over with aftershocks tonight.
Remember, to create an ad like this one, visit purewinning.com/CNN.
Tonight, a warning from the top Republican on the Senate Intelligence Committee. Here's Chairman Burr.
We have made referrals to the special prosecutor. If you lie to us, we're going to go after you.
Made referrals. This, of course, is after Michael Cohen has now admitted he lied to the Senate and House Intelligence Committees to protect the president. Out front now, Democratic Senator Richard Blumenthal of Connecticut. Senator, thank you for being with me. All right, so Senator Burr is saying multiple referrals to Mueller. Do you think Cohen's just the tip of the iceberg here?
I think that there are a lot of people who potentially lied to Congress, and it begins with Donald Trump Jr. I sat through the Judiciary Committee proceedings and viewed his statements at the time, not only what he said, but the way he said it. And I felt then, I feel more strongly now, that there were very, very serious questions about his accuracy and his veracity. As a former prosecutor, I believe Robert Mueller has to review those statements that he made to the Judiciary Committee as well as the Intelligence Committee.
Now, obviously, Yahoo News is reporting that he and his sister, Ivanka, had pursued a Trump Tower deal in Moscow. Michael Cohen is saying he briefed the family, so not just the father, but obviously them as well, on this Trump Tower development. But Interior Committee, he said, I was looking through the transcript today, he was, quote, peripherally aware of Michael Cohen's efforts to build a tower. So do you believe that Donald Trump Jr. is in legal peril?
I think he really is in legal peril. He has very severe exposure right now, not only for what he knew about the Trump Tower development, but also what he said about whether he told his father about the Trump Tower meeting in June of 2016 with Russian agents, what he and his father did together on that Air Force One statement, what he said about the blocked phone numbers on calls surrounding
that meeting,
these issues. There are a lot of statements that he made that struck me at the time as very, very questionable.
All right, so you think he could be in legal peril, and you also have Burr saying we have made referrals to the special prosecutor. That's not referral, it's referrals. So multiple people here. You're saying you think multiple people lied. And he's
Felix
referred them to
also came before our committee. And I am certain that Robert Mueller, being the by-the-book, methodical, systematic prosecutor that he is looking at Felix Sater's testimony, because he was intimately involved
in the Trump Tower interaction, yes.
Exactly. He was the guy in Moscow on the ground, in effect, who was, in effect, introducing Michael Cohen to people on behalf of the Trump organization. And when Donald Trump says it was very legal and very cool, the question is, why did he lie to the American people about it, as he did during the campaign? And the Russians were complicit in those lies. They have leverage over Trump then, and they do now.
Okay, the president today, you said very cool. I want to read that tweet. He tweets, "Oh, I get it. I'm a very good developer, happily living my life. When I see our country going in the wrong direction, to put it mildly, against all odds, I decided to run for president and continue to run my business. Very legal and very cool. Talked about it on the campaign trail. Lightly looked at doing a building somewhere in Russia. Put up zero money, zero guarantees, and didn't do the project. Witch hunt." Now, the project never happened. Obviously, somewhere in Russia sounds absurd. It was in Moscow, and it always was in Moscow, and there was never any question of being anywhere else. But it did never happen, right? It was only a letter of intent. It didn't move forward. Could he have a point?
The project never happened, but not for lack of trying and not for lack of desire. And the point here is that he lied to the American people. He said there were no dealings with Russia well into 2016, when in fact there continued to be. And it may never have happened that the project in Moscow went forward, but the Russians knew that he was lying to the American people. They enabled him, and now they have that leverage over him. So he's compromised.
All right, you have challenged the constitutionality of Matt Whitaker as Attorney General, right? Obviously, you've sued to do that. Documents came out today. Whitaker was aware of fraud claims on a Florida company. He sat in the advisory board. He was aware of those fraud claims. Obviously, the Justice Department had previously said he was not aware of those fraud claims via a statement. So ostensibly, they talked to him about it. That's why they put out the statement. What's your response?
My response is one more piece of evidence why Matt Whitaker has no business being acting Attorney General.
So quickly before we go to the Washington Post today, they went through every single thing they could find that he's ever said. He said the president was self-serving in firing Jim Comey. This is Matt Whitaker. Matt Whitaker also said the president should release his tax returns. Today, the ranking members on the House Judiciary Oversight Committee said, look, he has promised he will follow the regulations when it comes to the Russia probe and it comes to the special counsel. Is it possible you've made a mistake? He could be objective.
These questions, and they're good questions, are exactly the kind of questions that have to be resolved through a confirmation process. We've sued Matt Whitaker because there's been no advice and consent. There have been no hearings. There has been no opportunity for us to ask those kinds of questions or about his financial dealings on behalf of private entities where severe questions about his integrity have been raised. So I'm never one to say that I'm infallible, but the advice and consent process required by the Constitution has never been used here.
All right. Thank you very much, Senator. I appreciate your time tonight, Senator Blumenthal. And out front next, President Trump's lavish praise for Putin.
He's done a very brilliant job in terms of what he represents and who he's representing.
Was that all trying to make a buck? Plus terrifying moments for thousands. A giant earthquake rocking the United States. This is Alaska. The aftershocks still happening at this hour.
I'm Mackenzie Atwood, and the Steven Universe podcast is all about Lars, with storyboard artist Lamar Abrams and Matthew Moy, the voice of Lars.
If Lars was to sing, this is what I think it would be. I think it would be this like intergalactic rock song with this like funky EDM bass. And it would be totally cosmic, and it would be a rock ballad to Sadie.
Subscribe to the Steven Universe podcast for free at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app.
Tonight, President Trump defending his business dealings with Russia after his former lawyer, Michael Cohen, admits lying about a proposed Trump Tower deal there to try to help out his boss. But it wasn't just the proposed Trump Tower project in Moscow. Trump tried for decades to do business in Russia, and this is the crucial point. Decades. How so? Tom Foreman is out front.
For decades, as the Trump empire expanded.
Standing as one of the Philippines' tallest buildings.
This piece of land, which is almost 2,000 acres, fronts on the North Sea.
Devouring real estate around the globe.
We're really creating Northern Baja as the new Cabo.
Donald Trump wanted something more, a Russian opportunity.
The Russians, however, began courting him in 87, before the end of the Soviet Empire, with this trip that he and Ivana went on. And Donald is very, very susceptible to people who flatter him.
It was a heady time. As communism was collapsing, a wealthy, hungry business class was rising in Russia. Just the kind of people who might invest in what Trump had described as a large luxury hotel across the street from the Kremlin.
Trump was going where the buyers might be found. And so it was natural for him to go to Russia when the oligarchy was emerging and billionaires were being minted almost on a regular basis.
By the time he brought his Miss Universe pageant to Moscow in 2013, he was lavishing praise on Russian President Vladimir Putin.
He's done a very brilliant job in terms of what he represents and who he's representing. If you look at what he's done with Syria, if you look at so many of the different things, he has really eaten our president's lunch. Let's not kid ourselves.
Through it all, Trump persistently tried to make a deal for a marquee Trump property in Moscow. In 2015, he proposed putting the tallest building in the world there, the spa named after his daughter Ivanka.
Over a 30-year period, he tried again and again to do deals there.
Mr. Cohen.
The deals all fell apart, and yet his longtime fixer is now telling a federal judge deep into the 2016 campaign as Trump turned his previous claims about Putin.
I do have a relationship, and I can tell you that he's very interested in what we're doing here today.
Upside down.
I have nothing to do with Putin. I've never spoken to him. I don't know anything about him other than he will respect me.
Even then, his former lawyer says Trump was still trying to find some kind of an angle to get that long-awaited and never-fulfilled Russian deal. Aaron?
All right, Tom Foreman, thank you very much. And obviously the history here so important. A long time that Trump was working there. And a major earthquake now striking Alaska. Roads collapsing, buildings destroyed, thousands left in the dark. Temperatures now well below freezing. Plus,
the ayes have it.
There it is.
That moment, impeachment fever began in this country.
Good day, Sweet World! Jay Skeets here from The Starters, and basketball is back. Join me, Tass, Lee, and Trey at 6 Eastern every weeknight on NBA TV as we break down everything that matters to NBA fans, from trade rumors to Twitter beefs. And don't forget to check out our podcast, The Drop, now dropping twice a week every Tuesday and Friday on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and NBA.com/TheStarters. Until then, embrace the day, people.
Breaking news, a 7.0 earthquake rocking Alaska, still sending powerful aftershocks that are reverberating for hundreds of miles. Homes, roads destroyed when the quake struck around 8:30 a.m. Local time, obviously middle of the day here on the East Coast. Officials warning of devastating damage throughout the state. Now, they don't even know the extent of it right now. Miguel Marquez is out front with what we know.
Freaking earthquake! Earth-shattering terror for nearly a minute and a half, just as the Anchorage day was starting. The 7.0 quake and dozens of aftershocks felt for hundreds of miles. Home security cameras caught the confusion for humans and their pets. Outright fear for many.
Thank you, Lord, that I was just getting ready to take my babies to school.
Some kids already at school.
Holy, that was sick.
Dived under their desks, all thankful to be alive.
Let's go around. That's the FedEx?
At the Anchorage airport, a FedEx plane on final approach. The landing aborted. Alarm in the controller's voice.
Tower FedEx 49. FedEx 49 heavy, go around. Going around FedEx 49.
Shark up, there was a earthquake here.
Sydney Vaught was on a layover when the quake hit. She went under the airport bench and the power went out.
Earthquakes keep happening, so I'm definitely on edge about that. I kind of want to duck and hide whenever that happens.
Several roads around Anchorage.
Holy smoke.
Little more than crumbles.
There has been extensive damage to roads, to infrastructure. It's winter, it's cold, it's dark, and we're not sure what that power situation is. We're worried about breaks in gas lines.
This is empty.
That guy's lucky. Sarah Palin's parents' home appears ransacked. The former vice presidential candidate tweeting, "Family is intact, house is not." What might be most shocking at the moment is that there are no reports of anyone being killed, some reports of injuries so far. But, Alaska is in an earthquake zone. It has been hit by several 7.0s and higher in the last 20 years or so, never this close to a population center. The biggest issue right now might be that Anchorage, the big city there, it's pretty much cut off from the rest of the state because of the roads. All of their goods come in through Anchorage, either by sea or by plane. This could be a major problem going forward.
All right. Thank you very much, Miguel. Obviously, as they continue to have aftershocks, that a very serious concern. Kristen Dassett is on the phone with me right now. She was in Palmer, Alaska at her home when the earthquake struck. That's about 50 miles from Anchorage, of course, by the epicenter. And Kristen, thank you for being with me. We're glad you're okay. We're glad that you're able to be on the phone, and be able to talk. I mean, what happened here? You were in the middle of one of the most powerful earthquakes to hit Alaska.
Yeah, it was absolutely terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. It started shaking, and then the power went out. So being at 8:30 in the morning, it's dark here, so it was completely pitch black. Fumbled for my phone, and it just kept shaking, and everything came off the dressers. Everything came off the bookcases. Photos are all on the ground. We lost all our glassware in our kitchen. Just everything's everywhere. We've been cleaning up glass all day. We're physically fine. There's not much damage to our house. We have one crack in a wall. But other than that, we are just all fine.
I mean, it just must have been so terrifying. I mean, we're looking at some of the video that we have, the pictures, that courtroom in Anchorage, where the violent shaking lasted for over a minute. I can't imagine how long that felt to you, though. I mean, it must have felt so much longer than that. What did you do during the actual shaking as it was hitting?
I was laying in bed watching CNN, and I grabbed my dog, I grabbed my phone, tried to get a hold of my husband who works in Anchorage. And he texted me, and I was able to text him, and we talked to each other, and then I ran to the other end of the house to find my son, who was sleeping, and he was okay. And then I called my parents who live in New York to let them know that we were okay. And then they kind of contacted other siblings, and I contacted my kids that live out of state to let them know. But this was all why it was shaking. You're just absolutely terrified. You just want to let everybody know that you're okay, and then you just keep having aftershocks after aftershock.
Well, look, our thoughts are with you. Those aftershocks, I'm sure that they're scary, and of course, you never know exactly what will happen. So we're thinking of you during that. And Kristen, thank you so much. And next, impeachment fever. It started with Bill Clinton, and it's gotten worse and worse. Fareed Zakaria with a special report coming up next.
So many people around the world depend on CNN's quality reporting, and now they have an incredible online store with clothes, gear, and gadgets. Right now, you can get 15% off your purchase. Just visit store.cnn.com, and when you're checking out, enter the code CNN Podcast, just one word, and get a 15% discount. It's that simple. That's store.cnn.com.
Out front tonight, impeachment. Now, it's only happened 3 times in American history, but it's a word that recently has been thrown around quite often. A new documentary from our Fareed Zakaria looks at the history of presidential impeachments in this country. Take a look.
You know, all my life I've wanted to be involved with people.
In 1978, a bright-eyed 32-year-old Bill Clinton was running for governor of Arkansas.
I've tried to bring out the best in people through politics, and I've really been very happy doing it.
He and his wife Hillary were also investing in some real estate. A nice little patch of land in the Ozarks called Whitewater. That plot of land on the White River, a 2-bit real estate deal that ended up losing money, would change the course of history.
Are you a subject or a target? Mrs. Clinton, did they read you your right?
Decades later,
the Whitewater controversy.
Whitewater, political turbulence over Whitewater.
Whitewater became a massive, spiraling investigation.
Is there a deal, Mother?
That led prosecutors to a sex scandal.
The ayes have it.
There it is.
William Jefferson Clinton is impeached.
That became the second presidential impeachment in American history. How on earth did that little corner of Arkansas,
I hereby deliver these articles of impeachment,
explode into a constitutional showdown?
It's pretty incredible when you think about it. Out front now, Fareed. The documentary is called Presidents Under Fire. You know, presidential historian Tim Naftali in your documentary says that after Clinton, impeachment went from being something that you only use in moments of constitutional crisis to something used for everyday partisan battles, which sounds like that's what you're talking about. You start with a failed land deal 20 years before, you end up with sex acts in the Oval Office, and that got them what they wanted, to do what they wanted. He says it's a horrible development for the American people. You call it impeachment fever. We saw it with George W. Bush. We saw it with Barack Obama. We are seeing it right now with Donald Trump.
We are absolutely seeing it with him. When George W. Bush left office, 1/3 of America wanted to impeach him. When Barack Obama left office, 1/3 of America wanted to impeach him. And when Donald Trump entered office, on the first day, 1/3 of the American public wanted to impeach him. So we've gone from, after Andrew Johnson, this is Lincoln's successor, and it was a very bad impeachment, generally, again, regarded as a wrongful impeachment. For 100 years, nobody ever broached the issue of impeachment because it was seen as having been tarnished. After Nixon, it was seen as having worked, but still, it was, from 1973 all the way to the 1990s, you hadn't had one.
But now it's like a way for the side that lost to get a redo, is what it almost seems like.
There were people who called for the impeachment of Hillary Clinton before she was even elected. I think that you raise a very important point. The Clinton impeachment happened at the start of this new hyper-partisan America. It was also the birth of Fox News. It was the beginning of Matt Drudge and all those websites, like Breitbart. So it was this take no prisoners politics, and impeachment then becomes not the nuclear option, but the new normal.
All right, Fareed, thank you very much. I mean, obviously, I think as you used Tim Naftali to say, deeply disturbing developments, but the history here is so crucial, and you don't want to miss the special report, Presidents Under Fire, the history of impeachment. Fareed's documentary is Sunday night at 9. Thank you for joining us. Anderson starts now.
So many people around the world depend on CNN's quality reporting, and now they have an incredible online store with clothes, gear, and gadgets. Right now, you can get 15% off your purchase. Just visit store.cnn.com, and when you're checking out, enter the code CNN Podcast, just one word, and get a 15% discount. It's that simple. That's store.cnn.com.
Hey, Sekou Smith here from the Hang Time Podcast. Join me and my main man, John Schumann, every week as we break down the latest NBA news and storylines with guests from around the league. Be sure to subscribe to NBA Hang Time on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and NBA.com/podcast for new episodes every Monday and Thursday this season.